In the summer of 2005, the Mississippi Gulf Coast radiated a quiet, natural energy, its landscapes alive with subtle movement and timeless beauty. The region was a tapestry of deep history and ongoing transformation, where every structure and street corner seemed to hold echoes of the past. Ancient live oaks, their limbs heavy with Spanish moss, stood as silent sentinels, bearing witness to centuries of change and the slow passage of time. Along the coastline, the rhythm of the tides shaped the daily life of the land itself. The gentle ebb and flow of water marked the hours, while shrimp boats rested quietly in their slips, waiting for the next journey. Towns like Biloxi, Gulfport, and Bay St. Louis basked in a period of prosperity, their streets lined with vibrant storefronts and the promise of new beginnings. The air was filled not only with the scent of salt water, but with the distant hum of construction. Cranes poised above the horizon, scaffolding rising steadily, and blueprints unfurled in anticipation of the future. The landscape itself was in a state of constant gentle transformation, shaped by wind, water, and the slow march of progress. Along the scenic Highway 90, the architecture told stories of preservation and change, some buildings standing as proud reminders of the coast's historic character. Nearby, the skeletal frames of new high-rise condominiums reached skyward, symbols of a new era of coastal living and ambition. The nearly completed Hard Rock Casino in Biloxi stood as a monument to the region's booming entertainment industry, its grand opening eagerly anticipated. As dusk fell, neon lights began to shimmer along the coast, illuminating the night and reflecting the area's vibrant spirit. Even art was taking shape in the landscape, with the bold curving forms of the Frank Gehry-designed Orr O'Keefe Museum of Art rising as a testament to cultural ambition. The evenings brought a sense of calm and confidence, the streets bathed in the warm glow of sunset, the future seeming bright and assured. The community was deeply connected to its past, with historic neighborhoods standing side by side with new developments, each structure a chapter in the ongoing story of the coast. The Broadwater Hotel, a beloved landmark for 76 years, stood quietly as it prepared to close its doors, its legacy woven into the fabric of the coast. The transition was bittersweet as demolition equipment waited nearby and blueprints for a brand new complex promised a future of condos, retail spaces, and another casino. Just days before everything would change, the city of Long Beach marked its centennial. The streets adorned with banners and flags, the air filled with a sense of celebration. The parks and beaches along the Mississippi Sound stood ready for gatherings, their quiet beauty a testament to a century of community and shared history. The land itself seemed to hold memory, a profound sense of place rooted in the sandy soil, shaped by the gentle Gulf breezes and the ever-changing tides. In the halls of local government, the ordinary passage of time was marked by quiet transitions, the appointment of new leaders taking place in sunlit rooms. Colonel Joe Spraggins had just been named Harrison County's new civil defense director. His office, ready and waiting, symbolized a community's trust in its future safety. His first official day on the job was set for a Monday, August 29th, 2005, a date that would soon be etched in memory. The coast, vibrant and full of promise, was living its final days of peace, the stillness of the landscape belying the changes to come. Far out in the warm Atlantic, a force of nature was gathering strength, its approach unseen but destined to test the very heart of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Far out over the vast Atlantic, a tropical disturbance began to swirl, its energy gathering silently above the open water. The first warning signs appeared as satellite images captured the storm's slow, methodical rotation, a mass of clouds tightening with each passing hour. The disturbance was given a name, Katrina. Weather models and forecast maps began to trace its projected path, lines and cones of uncertainty stretching across digital screens. The storm's early trajectory suggested a familiar story, one that would likely spare the Mississippi coast. But as the days passed, subtle changes emerged. By Friday, August 26th, the projected track began to curve ominously westward. Digital maps flashed with new warnings, and the threat zone expanded to include the vulnerable coastlines of Louisiana and Mississippi. The Gulf's warm waters, shimmering under a heavy sky, became a silent accomplice, fueling the storm's rapid intensification. Satellite imagery revealed bands of rain and wind expanding, the system growing stronger and more organized with every hour. The transformation was dramatic. Calm waters turned turbulent and the sky darkened as Katrina exploded into a monstrous Category 5 hurricane. The eye of the storm, perfectly formed, stared down from space, a harbinger of the chaos to come. The warnings grew more dire. Computer models predicted a storm surge of unimaginable height, 18 to 28 feet, set to arrive at high tide. Watermarks from past storms stood as silent reminders, while the tide crept higher in anticipation. Across the region, the convergence of catastrophic conditions was clear. Emergency vehicles lined up, their lights flashing in the gloom, while official warnings echoed through empty streets and over the airwaves. The landscape bore the marks of past storms. Abandoned radios, packed bags left by doors, and empty roads that once bustled with hurried preparations. The memory of previous hurricanes lingered in the stillness. Sturdy homes, marked by plaques commemorating past survival, stood boarded and braced for the coming onslaught. Vehicles, packed and ready, lined driveways and highways, poised for escape or endurance. Highways, once arteries of escape, became choked with unmoving vehicles. Gas stations, their pumps dry, stood deserted, silent witnesses to the desperation of last-minute preparations. Overhead the sky churned with gathering menace. The sea, once gentle, now heaved and roared beneath the weight of the approaching storm. Every sign in nature pointed to the inevitable. Katrina was coming, and the coast was bracing for impact. The final hours of Sunday night were filled with an eerie, unsettling calm. The wind was still, the air thick and heavy, but on the western horizon the sky began to take on a strange, bruised colour. This was the calm before the storm, a final, quiet moment before the world would be torn apart. The landscape seemed to hold its breath as if aware of the impending chaos. The shoreline, usually a place of serenity, began to feel ominous. They were about to witness the full, untamed power of the planet. The natural world in its most violent form was coming for them. There was nowhere left to run. As darkness fell, the first signs of Katrina's arrival appeared. The outer bands of the hurricane began to lash the coast with torrential rain and powerful gusts of wind. The sea, once calm, began to churn violently, its waves growing larger and more menacing with each passing hour. The very sound of the environment changed. The gentle lapping of waves was replaced by a deep, guttural roar that seemed to emanate from the ocean itself. This was merely the prelude, a small taste of the immense power that was following close behind. The storm was not just arriving, it was announcing its presence with a voice of thunder. The storm made its official landfall on the morning of Monday, August 29th, 2005. It was no longer a distant threat on a map. It was a physical reality of terrifying proportions. The winds did not just gust, they screamed. It was a constant, deafening shriek that sounded like 1,000 freight trains passing at once. This was not a normal storm. It was a sustained assault that would last for nearly 12 hours. Trees that had stood for a century were snapped in two like twigs. Roofs were peeled from houses as if they were can lids. The very air became a weapon, filled with flying debris that turned everyday objects into deadly projectiles. But the wind, as destructive as it was not the primary killer. The true horror came from the water. The predicted storm surge began to rush inland, a colossal wall of dark, churning ocean. It was a force that did not respect boundaries or history. It flowed over sea walls, surged across Highway 90, and consumed everything in its path. Homes that had stood for generations, Homes that had never seen a drop of flood water were suddenly inundated. The water rose with terrifying speed, not in inches, but in feet per minute. The solid ground they had trusted their entire lives had vanished beneath a raging sea. As the storm's surge moved inland, it carried with it an almost unimaginable force. This was not simply a flood. It was a battering ram of water, debris, and raw power. It lifted entire houses from their foundations and carried them away. It picked up cars and trucks, tossing them about like toys. Massive casino barges, each weighing thousands of tons and moored with thick steel cables, were ripped from their docks. They became unguided behemoths, pushed by the surge across the landscape, crushing everything they encountered. The sound was one of constant destruction, the splintering of wood, the groaning of metal, and the explosive shattering of glass, all set against the ceaseless howl of the wind. The water rose relentlessly, pouring through doors and windows. Families scrambled to higher floors, then into their attics, seeking refuge from the climbing flood. The attic, once a place of storage, became a dark, terrifying prison. With hammers, axes, or their bare hands, they frantically tried to break through their own roofs, hoping to escape the rising water below. The 911 dispatch centres were overwhelmed. Calls for help poured in, the voices on the other end filled with panic and desperation. Dispatchers could only listen, helpless, as people described the water filling their homes, knowing that no rescue crews could be sent out into the storm's fury. Even the beacons of the community, the places people turned to for information and reassurance, were not safe. At the WLOX TV station in Biloxi, the news crew broadcasted live, providing a vital lifeline to the public. Then, in the middle of their report, the storm tore a hole in their own roof. The ceiling began to collapse, and water poured into the studio. The dedicated crew was forced to abandon their news desk and retreat to a more secure interior part of the building. For a moment the voice of the coast went silent, swallowed by the very storm it was reporting on. It was a terrifying symbol of the hurricane's absolute dominance over the man-made world. For what felt like an eternity, the assault continued. 12 hours of hurricane-force winds and a relentless, crushing surge. The storm did not just damage the coast, it scoured it clean. It fundamentally altered the geography, redrawing the line between land and sea. The familiar world of homes, businesses, and neighborhoods was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. When the wind finally began to subside and the waters slowly started to recede, they would reveal a landscape that was utterly alien. The world that had existed just one day before was gone forever, washed away by the incredible power of Katrina. When the sun rose on Tuesday, August 30th, it revealed a landscape transformed beyond recognition, a vast tableau of devastation stretching as far as the eye could see. The Mississippi Gulf Coast, once vibrant and full of life, was now a wasteland. Entire neighborhoods had been erased, leaving only empty foundations and scattered debris where homes and businesses once stood. For miles inland, the land was a tangled expanse of splintered wood, twisted metal, and thick, suffocating mud. Streets had vanished beneath piles of wreckage, and the familiar grid of the town was lost beneath the chaos. The scale of destruction was almost impossible to comprehend. Panoramic views showed nothing but ruin. Block after block of flattened structures, their contents strewn in every direction. Landmarks that had defined the coast for generations were gone. The elegant Biloxi Ocean Springs Bridge and the majestic Bay St. Louis Bridge, once vital arteries, were reduced to broken concrete spans and lonely pilings jutting from the water. Historic treasures, too, had vanished. The beautiful Episcopal Church of the Redeemer, whose bell tower had survived previous storms, was now only a memory, its stones scattered and its sanctuary erased. Tullis Manor, the Seafood Museum, and the historic Pleasant Reed House all were reduced to piles of debris, their legacies swept away in a single night. The brand-new O'Keeffe Museum, a beacon of artistic hope, lay in a heap of twisted steel and shattered glass, its promise for the future buried beneath the storm's wrath. Even the massive casinos, symbols of the coast's economic power, were no match for the hurricane. The Grand Casino barge had been lifted and deposited across Highway 90, resting atop the very ground where Tullis Manor once stood. The President Casino barge had vanished entirely, leaving only an empty space where it had once dominated the shoreline. The Copa Casino was found far inland, perched precariously among the ruins. The nearly finished Hard Rock Casino, with its collection of irreplaceable memorabilia, was gutted, its walls torn open, its treasures exposed to the elements. The storm had shown no mercy, treating even the largest structures as if they were nothing more than toys in its path. In the hardest-hit areas like Waveland and Bay St. Louis, the devastation was absolute. Aerial views revealed near total destruction, entire neighborhoods reduced to bare earth and scattered fragments, with almost nothing left standing. The water had claimed everything in its path, leaving behind only silence and the haunting sight of personal belongings, family photographs, furniture, cherished mementos, floating in muddy pools or tangled in the wreckage. It was a scene of almost unimaginable loss, a testament to the storm's relentless power and the vulnerability of even the most enduring landmarks. The Mississippi Gulf Coast, once a tapestry of history, culture, and community, had been reduced to a monochromatic world of ruin, its past swept away, its future uncertain, and its present marked by the unfathomable scale of destruction. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, a strange and unsettling silence fell over the coast. The roar of the hurricane was replaced by an eerie quiet, broken only by the drip of water and the distant sound of alarms. The region was plunged into a primitive state. There was no electricity, no running water, and no way to communicate with the outside world. Cell phone towers were down and landlines were destroyed. People were completely isolated, trapped in a ruined landscape, with no knowledge of what was happening even a few miles away. The basic systems that support modern life had ceased to exist. As the initial shock began to wear off, a new and desperate reality set in. The survivors needed everything. Food, clean drinking water, gasoline, ice, and medicine were suddenly the most precious commodities on Earth. Long, desperate lines began to form at any location rumored to have supplies. People waited for hours under the hot sun for a single bottle of water or a bag of ice. At the port of Gulfport, the situation was made worse by a unique environmental problem. The storm surge had ruptured storage containers filled with frozen chicken and pork bellies, which now lay baking in the heat, spreading a sickening odor for miles around. In the chaos and desperation, social order began to fray. With no police presence in many areas, looting became a serious problem. Some of it was driven by desperation, people searching for food and water. But others took advantage of the lawlessness to steal whatever they could from shattered homes and businesses. In response, authorities who were able to mobilize established checkpoints on the few passable roads. They unrolled razor wire to secure devastated neighborhoods, turning parts of the American coastline into something resembling a war zone. It was a stark and brutal measure, but a necessary one to restore a semblance of order amidst the anarchy. The official response from government agencies, particularly FEMA, was painfully slow and widely criticized. Help was promised, but for days very little arrived. This failure left a vacuum that was filled by an incredible outpouring of grassroots support. Churches, community groups, and volunteers from across the country mobilized with astonishing speed. They set up makeshift distribution centers in parking lots, cooking meals for thousands of hungry survivors. They handed out water, diapers, and clothing. These volunteers, driven by simple human compassion, became the first real lifeline for the devastated communities, providing not just supplies but a desperately needed sense of hope. The greatest toll of the storm was not measured in toppled buildings or twisted steel, but in the silent testimony of what was left behind, objects that once held meaning, now scattered and broken. Every pile of debris was once a home, filled with memories and the small treasures of a life lived, now reduced to fragments, each piece whispering a story of loss. For thousands, the devastation was compounded by a cruel twist of fate, revealed in the soggy paperwork and official letters left behind. Premiums had been paid faithfully for years, the documents now a testament to trust and hope that protection would come. But when the time came, the answer was always the same. Standard homeowners insurance did not cover the floodwaters, even when driven by hurricane winds. The companies pointed to the fine print, wind-driven floodwater, a peril that required a separate, costly policy. This distinction, buried in legal jargon, was a devastating blow to those who had already lost everything. Many did not have flood insurance, their homes outside the coloured lines of official maps that now seemed meaningless. They had been told it was unnecessary, a risk not worth worrying about. Now, with everything gone, the words on those pages offered no comfort, only confirmation that their losses would not be covered. Years of bitter legal battles would follow, the fight waged in silent courtrooms and through endless paperwork. Renowned lawyers took up the cause, but for many, the help they needed would come too late or not at all. The crisis left a deep scar, anger and betrayal etched into the landscape long after the water receded. The stories of survival were both miraculous and heartbreaking, told through the objects left behind. In past Christian, a mattress became a lifeboat floating through the darkness as the house dissolved around it. Hours passed in the churning water, debris swirling in the blackness until the surge finally receded and silence returned. In another home, neighbours trapped in their attics communicated through the walls, shouting, tapping, hoping for a response. They broke through barriers, moving from one attic to the next as the water rose, a silent, desperate journey through darkness and fear. These were tales of courage and ingenuity, born from absolute desperation and the will to survive, but for every story of survival there were countless stories of loss, marked by the quiet presence of what remained. The current tore apart what mattered most. One moment together, the next separated by the force of the water. Homes, the centre of so many lives, were crushed and swept away, leaving only emptiness behind. A lifetime of hard work and cherished memories vanished in an instant, leaving only fragments to be found in the mud. The emotional and psychological trauma lingered, heavy and unseen, in the spaces where people once gathered. The storm did not just destroy physical structures. It left deep, invisible wounds that would take a generation to heal. The true cost of Katrina was etched not just in the landscape, but in the silent testimony of what was left behind. Amidst the seemingly endless landscape of destruction, small but powerful symbols of hope began to emerge. The most iconic of these was the WLOX lighthouse. It had stood guard over the coast since 1848, surviving countless storms. When the waters of Katrina receded, the lighthouse was still there. Its interior had been filled with mud and debris, its lamp damaged, but it had not fallen. It stood as a defiant symbol of endurance, a testament to the coast's ability to withstand even the most ferocious assault. The resilience of the human spirit began to manifest in countless ways. American flags, salvaged from the debris, began to appear, hung from broken trees or nailed to the side of shattered buildings. On pieces of plywood that once formed the walls of their homes, residents painted messages for the world to see. Some were pleas for help, others were expressions of grief, but many were messages of hope and determination. We will rebuild Mississippi strong, and don't give up the ship. These simple, hand-painted signs were a declaration that the community was still alive. The natural world, too, provided a remarkable story of survival. The marine life attraction in Gulfport had been completely destroyed by the storm, and its 8 bottlenose dolphins were swept out into the Gulf of Mexico. It was assumed they had perished, But weeks later, a stunning discovery was made. All 8 dolphins were found alive, swimming together as a pod in the open water. A team was assembled, and in a complex and emotional rescue operation, every single one of them was brought to safety. The news of the dolphin rescue spread like wildfire, a rare and joyful piece of good news in a sea of sorrow. It was a story of survival against all odds, a miracle that lifted the spirits of the entire region. The leaders of the state recognized that immediate and decisive action was needed to begin the long road to recovery. Governor Haley Barbour formed the Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding and Renewal to create a comprehensive strategy for the future. In a crucial move to restart the shattered economy, the Mississippi legislature held a special session and quickly passed a law allowing casinos, which had previously been required to be on barges, to be rebuilt on land. This decision provided a critical economic incentive, paving the way for reinvestment and the eventual return of thousands of jobs. It was the first concrete step in the monumental task of rebuilding the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The recovery of the Mississippi Gulf Coast was not a single event, but a long, arduous process, one that unfolded in silence across landscapes stripped bare by the storm. Day by day, the evidence of renewal appeared in subtle, persistent ways. Stacks of lumber waiting to become new homes, blue tarps fluttering in the wind, and the slow clearing of debris from once familiar streets. The spirit of the community was reflected in the landscape itself. Each cleared lot, each upright utility pole, a silent testament to resilience. Where homes had vanished, driveways and mailboxes remained, stubbornly marking the promise of return. The storm had erased much, but the land itself held memories, remnants of daily life, waiting for renewal. The disaster had stripped away the familiar, but beneath the devastation, the groundwork for rebuilding was quietly being laid. This was the true strength of the coast, an enduring landscape shaped by wind and water, yet always ready for renewal. Over the months and years that followed, the signs of rebirth emerged. New foundations poured, construction materials arriving, the land itself preparing for a new chapter. The silence of loss was gradually replaced by the steady rhythm of rebuilding, the hum of machinery, the clang of tools, the transformation of empty spaces. New foundations were poured where old homes once stood, each slab a promise that life would return. Businesses began to reappear, sometimes in temporary structures, but always with the intention of permanence. The casinos, now permitted on land, launched massive rebuilding projects, their steel skeletons rising as symbols of economic hope. Each new frame, each completed roof, was a quiet victory, a step forward in the long journey back. The process was slow and often interrupted by setbacks, but the landscape changed, little by little, with every passing season. The promise was not just to rebuild, but to build back stronger. Homes elevated above the floodline, plans drawn for a safer future. New building codes required homes to be raised, and the landscape adapted, with pilings and barriers standing guard against future storms. The vision for the future was mapped out in plans and blueprints, the promise of resilience etched into every design. The past was honored in the preservation of historic structures, even as new forms and ideas took root beside them. Recovery was not just about rebuilding, but about renewal, creating spaces for life to flourish once more. Today, 20 years after Katrina, the Mississippi Gulf Coast stands as a testament to the enduring promise of renewal. The scars of the storm remain, empty lots, memorials, and markers that quietly honor what was lost. Yet the overwhelming impression is one of life, of a coast that refused to be defeated, where nature and renewal walk hand in hand. The land itself bears witness to the promise kept, the determination to reclaim, restore, and renew. The Mississippi Gulf Coast's most enduring landmark is not a building or a monument, but the unyielding promise etched into the landscape itself, a promise to rebuild no matter the odds. In the wake of the storm, long after the winds faded and the waters receded, the land itself began to heal in silence. The battered coastline, once stripped bare, slowly welcomed back the first green shoots, a quiet renewal unfolding without fanfare. Grasses pushed up through the sand and debris, weaving a fragile carpet where concrete and timber had once lain scattered. Salt-stained oaks, their limbs twisted and broken, sprouted new leaves that shimmered in the gentle sunlight, a silent testament to resilience beyond words. Seagulls circled above empty lots, their calls echoing in the stillness, while pelicans returned to nest on fractured piers jutting into the calm grey water. Marshlands, once choked by debris, began to breathe again, their reeds swaying softly as tidal rhythms resumed. Over time, wildflowers took root in the cracks of abandoned driveways, painting bursts of colour across the scarred landscape. The river deltas, reshaped by the surge, offered new sanctuary to herons and egrets, who stood motionless in the shallow waters, waiting for the return of fish. Even the ruined forests whispered of hope. Saplings emerged among fallen trunks, and vines crept quietly over shattered fences, reclaiming what had been lost. In these quiet moments, nature's own recovery unfolded, unseen by human eyes but relentless in its persistence. The landscape, changed forever, adapted and endured, offering the first gentle promise of renewal long before the hum of rebuilding began. Here in the hush after disaster, the Mississippi Gulf Coast witnessed nature's quiet return, a reminder that healing begins in silence and that life in all its forms finds a way to begin again. Even without a single human figure in sight, the signs of community resilience began to ripple across the battered landscape. In the empty streets, flags, tattered but upright, fluttered atop mailboxes, silent signals of hope left behind. Hand-painted signs, weathered yet defiant, proclaim messages of strength and unity. We will return, stronger together. Hope lives here. These small gestures, scattered like seeds, marked the places where neighbours had once gathered, promising that they would gather again. Amid the ruins, the rhythmic hum of generators echoed from distant porches, a testament to determination as power lines and infrastructure slowly returned to life. Schoolyards, still vacant, bore chalk messages scrawled across cracked pavement, words of encouragement, hearts and rainbows drawn by unseen hands, reminders that children's voices would one day fill the air once more. Neighbourhood gardens, though wild and overgrown, showed signs of careful tending. Rows of vegetables poked through the soil, protected by makeshift fences built from storm debris. Bird feeders hung from battered trees, refilled regularly, drawing flocks of sparrows and cardinals, evidence of a community still caring for its smallest members, even in absence. At the heart of every intersection, bulletin boards overflowed with flyers and notes, offers of help, lists of supplies, directions to makeshift shelters. These quiet markers of connection, resilient and enduring, mapped the invisible web of support binding the community together. As dusk settled, porch lights flickered on, dotting the darkness with points of warmth. Each light, a silent promise that life would return, that the bonds of community would not be broken by wind or water. In these subtle, powerful ways, the spirit of resilience echoed through every empty street and silent yard, a chorus of hope, sung not by voices, but by the enduring marks of those determined to rebuild together. With the dawn of a new day, the landscape shifts once more, not with the chaos of nature, but with the quiet order of recovery. Across the battered neighbourhoods, the first signs of rebuilding begin to emerge, even in the absence of human figures. Construction equipment, brightly coloured excavators and cranes, stand poised beside cleared lots, their metal arms curled in repose, ready to shape the future. Piles of fresh lumber and neatly stacked bricks line the edges of driveways, while blueprints, weighted by stones, flutter gently in the breeze atop makeshift tables. Roads, once impassable, are now marked by cones and barricades, guiding invisible crews as they lay new asphalt and repair broken curbs. Streetlights, newly installed, gleam silver against the sky, awaiting the return of evening to cast their glow over safe passageways. In the heart of the community, the skeletal frames of new homes rise from concrete foundations, their beams reaching skyward, a testament to plans drawn and dreams deferred, now taking shape. Gardens are replanted with rows of young seedlings, protected by carefully constructed trellises. Rain barrels and solar panels appear alongside rooftops, signaling a commitment not just to rebuild, but to build smarter and stronger. Community centres once shattered sport fresh paint and reinforced walls, their doors propped open in anticipation of future gatherings. Bulletin boards now display architectural renderings and timelines for restoration, while mailboxes overflow with newsletters detailing upcoming projects and ways to help. Even the smallest details, newly hung wind chimes, freshly painted fences, repaired birdhouses, suggest a future of care and renewal. As the sun sets, the landscape is transformed by the golden light glinting off new surfaces, the promise of return etched into every repaired corner and rising wall. The work is only beginning, but the foundations of tomorrow are already firmly in place, built on hope, resilience, and the unwavering will to restore what was lost, and to make it better than before. In the quiet aftermath, as reconstruction rises from the ruins, another kind of recovery unfolds, one orchestrated by nature itself. Across the landscape, battered trees sprout new leaves, their branches arching skyward in search of sunlight. Wild grasses reclaim the edges of empty lots, weaving green threads between the rubble, while vines curl around fallen fences and shattered sidewalks, softening the scars left behind. In the wetlands, once choked by debris and salt water, reeds and cattails begin to re-emerge, filtering the water and creating shelter for returning wildlife. Birds, cautious at first, flit between the branches of saplings, their songs tentative but growing stronger with each passing dawn. Squirrels and rabbits venture from hidden burrows, exploring the altered terrain, while butterflies dance among the blooms of newly planted gardens. Ponds, once muddied and lifeless, shimmer anew as dragonflies skim their surfaces. Pollinators, bees and moths return to visit wildflowers that have sprung up in cracks and corners, essential threads in the tapestry of renewal. Along the shoreline, dunes are rebuilt by wind and wave, and native grasses anchor the sand, preventing erosion and welcoming the slow return of coastal stability. Amidst the ongoing construction, patches of wildness are intentionally left untouched, serving as sanctuaries for displaced animals and seeds of future forests. Rain nourishes the soil, washing away dust and coaxing forth a flush of green, while sunlight warms the stones and encourages moss to spread across broken walls. Nature's resilience is quiet, persistent, and patient. It is seen in every new bud, every returning call, every inch of soil restored. As the community rebuilds, the environment too begins its healing, reminding all who witness it that recovery is not just a human endeavor, but a collaboration with the living world. Together they shape a future where hope and growth are shared by all who call this place home. In the wake of disaster and renewal, the land itself becomes a teacher. Each scar upon the earth, each regrown blade of grass, offers silent testimony to the importance of foresight and respect for nature's power. Riverbanks, once overwhelmed by surging waters, now bear the marks of reinforced natural barriers, restored wetlands and native vegetation working as living shields against future storms. Along the coast, newly planted dunes and thriving salt marshes stand as gentle reminders of the protection nature can provide when left intact. Amid the ruins, the absence of human presence reveals patterns and truths. Areas where the wild returned quickest are often those spared the heaviest hand of development. Empty lots left untouched flourish with biodiversity, demonstrating the value of open space as a buffer and sanctuary. Fallen trees left to decompose nurture the soil and foster new growth, teaching the wisdom of working with nature's cycles rather than against them. In the forests, firebreaks of native undergrowth slow the spread of flames, while ponds and rain gardens capture and cleanse runoff, reducing the risk of future flooding. These features, subtle and often overlooked, are nature's own blueprints for resilience, models for rebuilding not just structures but entire ecosystems with prevention in mind. Every returning bird and blooming wildflower speaks of a lesson learned. That harmony with the environment is the surest safeguard. The landscape, shaped by both destruction and renewal, now carries the imprint of knowledge, an unspoken promise to honor the balance between human ambition and the wild world's wisdom. The future, it suggests, belongs to those who listen and adapt, shaping a safer tomorrow from the lessons etched in the land today.